Welcome, wonderful and dedicated listeners, to the second half of Season 1, the 6th episode of the Young and Successful podcast. I sincerely hope you enjoyed last week's episode with Tanner. I personally cannot wait till the next time our paths cross. I feel like he teaches me something every time I see him. This week, I have someone truly special to kick off episode 6. I feel like I have grown to know him pretty well over the past 3 years. He's an inspiration to me and everyone else around him. I look forward to having another enlightening conversation with him today. I am your host, Carl Grin, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we delve into the money-making magic. So, Maj, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is pretty good for you to be here. I've known you for, 3 years now? We met in 2021 or 2020?
That's crazy, though.
It's been a long time since that very first little
conversation.
I think you and Max were in Miami.
Yeah.
And that call, and I was at camp. I was literally on a chainsaw. I turned up the chainsaw and we talked to you guys. I feel like you guys have come a long way in a lot of regards. You're still Maj, you're still the same person, but you've grown into somebody I've learned to heavily respect and look up to, regardless of you being that much younger than me. And I feel like I've seen you grow and seen how smart and your potential, but the rest of the audience and nobody else here kind of knows who Maj is or where you're from. So would you like to give us a little bit of a story of who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, absolutely. I still can't believe that we met 3 years ago on that call. That seems like...
I feel like I've known a lot of you, but that's still 3 years, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, my name is Majd. Thank you again, Carl, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to talk to you today. So I am a child of immigrants. My parents are both Jordanian.
Okay.
My mother came from a pretty well-off family in Jordan. My dad came from the villages, the absolute villages. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting dynamic there. So I was born in Michigan. My dad came to the U.S. to study and search for a better life for his kids, since living there is not so ideal. And when I was 2 years old, they moved me to Windsor because Michigan, they figured, was not the best place for education for kids. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Canada, very normal sort of middle-class life in Windsor. Very small city, not much going on there, very boring city. But that sort of gave me the freedom to really flourish individually as a child. So since it's such a boring city and there isn't that many distractions, I was really focused on school, on learning as much as possible. Those were kind of the values that my immigrant parents instilled in me. Education was a huge thing.
Okay.
So that was a big part of my life, was focused on school in Windsor. I also was really into tech from an early age. So I remember getting my first iPod at the age of 7, and then an iPhone 3 years later, and I was so obsessed with jailbreaking it, hacking it, finicking with it. Yeah. I used to take apart all the electronics in my house. And then when
parents probably hated that.
They hated that, yeah, exactly. And when I got my first MacBook, my whole world changed. So that was my first computer, and it opened up a world of ridiculous potential to my sort of engineering techie mind as a child. So I became obsessed with just all kinds of software. I was learning how to code. I was learning how to edit videos. I remember watching. I was just obsessed with computers. So I was spending a lot of time on computers. And that's sort of around the time when I realized that what I wanted to do is go into engineering or computer science, something to do with software.
Yeah.
So in high school, that was a lot of my direction, was sort of trying to study and work as much as possible to get into U of T computer engineering.
Okay.
And that's what happened. So yeah, I was always into tech and video games as a child. And then I got into computer engineering at U of T. And that sort of really started to open up my horizons. Just coming to a new city invokes a lot of growth. So I really found myself growing in a lot of ways socially.
So you found it wasn't necessarily you going to U of T and you seeing a smarter professor teaching you this. It was coming to the city and living in res and meeting new people that opened your mind.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it was more the physical change of where you are and the people you're meeting in the social scenario versus the people you are listening to and you're being lectured by.
Yeah,
it changed
100%.
Your perspective.
Yeah, growing in a small city, sort of sheltered by your family, and then coming out to a big city, living alone, it's really like life hits you in the face all at once.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, like you're kind of like your savior, your God, which is like to a lot of people, their family.
Yeah.
That all that stability goes out the window, and all of a sudden you find yourself like needing to figure out what it means to be a man surviving on their own. So that's was really exciting.
So you went out, you did your high school, you graduated with good enough marks to obviously get into the University of Toronto's computer engineering program.
Yeah.
And then did you finish that schooling? Did you stay there for years? Did you, like, what happened there?
Yeah. So even before I went to college, I was very much in the world of thinking like, what do I want for my future? And I was really a critical thinker from an early age, and I can get into why I was sort of blessed to be able to think critically and question a lot of things. And one thing that I really did question is if I needed a college degree at all. And that was something that I was even questioning going into college.
Okay.
But I had decided to do computer engineering. It was very strategic because I figured engineering and software are the best sort of majors or paths to lead me to what I want to do, which is sort of some kind of independent work in the realm of tech.
Okay.
So 1.5 years into U of T, I, fast forward a bunch, I had started Altura, and Maxim and I decided to drop out. So I only did it 1.5 years at the university.
Okay. And that's an interesting, because so you're a university dropout and you started a business. Was it because the business was too busy and taking too much of your time, or you just decided school wasn't for you? Like, what was the purpose of dropping out?
Yeah, I really couldn't see my subconscious checked out before my conscious did.
Okay.
So as I started to see my company grow and evolve, and I sort of started to develop a bit of financial independence, I was still wanting to continue school because I didn't feel like my company was enough of a sort of safety like backup for me to completely drop out. But I found that I just couldn't work as hard anymore, and my grades were starting to decline, and I wasn't engaged at all. And this created a lot of dissonance in me because throughout so much of my childhood, I was instilled the values that education is very important, and I felt a lot of guilt that my grades were dropping. But I sort of had to face the fact that clearly, I can't just work through this. My subconscious was sort of checked out.
Yeah.
And I clearly knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do as Altura. I sort of knew internally that school was holding me back in a lot of ways. And I sort of had to come to like accepting that.
So from what I remember when I used to have conversations with you and Max at the time, is that you guys just stopped and you deferred for a little bit, right? You didn't fully hard close the door right away, right?
Yeah.
Because that gave you like a couple of months. I'm just trying to bring this up because some people on the podcast that have listened and talked and everything are like, it's hard to fully close a door on an opportunity.
Yeah.
So you guys closed that door kind of in 2 steps. Is that correct? That you finished school and then you deferred basically for a semester, or deferred for whatever amount of time you guys deferred for, and then you decided, okay, this is still what I want to do. Because it's not like when you left for a semester and you could have went back. You could have tried to continue, right? Did you do that for a bit, or was that just Max?
I think that was just Maxim. I didn't make any calls. I didn't make any emails. I just stopped going to class.
Okay.
I just completely stopped. I didn't tell the school that I was dropping out at all.
Okay.
And then I just kept getting emails to pay off my loans, and then they realized I dropped out. And then I lost my student account and all of that stuff. But
yeah, you just basically you ghosted U of T.
I ghosted U of T. Yeah.
Okay, because I remember having that conversation one of the days with you in the Shang, and then Max went, I don't know, I might defer. You're like, I don't know, I might maybe. And then that was the last I actually had that conversation with you. But I didn't know if you guys both did the same route or.
Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't know you ghosted the university.
Yeah.
So do you have any backlash from that? Like, because most people feel like you can't just ghost an institution. Is there any is it okay now? Is everything like?
I haven't heard anything. I mean, I paid off my loans. I paid the government back for my student loans.
Yeah, so you're square financially, and then
I
you're
haven't
good.
heard anything from the school. Yeah.
That's crazy. I feel like you're the first person to bring up that. That's a really cool perspective to show kids. Like, yeah, man, you can just ghost university as long as you don't owe money. They'll stop contacting you.
Even if you owe them money, I didn't pay them back until like a month ago. I owed both Ontario and U of T. I took out loans from both, like $30K.
Okay.
And those were just waiting there for like a year and a half, 2 years. I kept getting calls from the U of T financial office, and they'd be like, I just hang up.
Damn.
But I paid it off.
No, that's okay. But yeah, you did the right thing, and yeah, okay, that makes sense. So where are you now? We know where Maj came from. What are you right now? What are you doing? What keeps you busy? Where's your work? You brought up Altura briefly. Is that what you do full time now? Is that your goal?
Yeah. So at this point in my life, my biggest focus is Altura, my software company. So I spend anywhere between 3 to 6 hours a day working on Altura, and that is very flexible. because of the nature of my job. I'm also focused on the gym, and I'm really focused on sort of experiencing life. So much of my life has been behind a laptop, been in a classroom, been behind books. Not all of it. I definitely was social growing up, but I feel like I want to lean a lot more into that part of life. And that's sort of what I've been doing over the last 2 years. So it's sort of like a reaction to my childhood.
Yeah.
I've been really going out there, exploring, making friends, and that's what a lot of my focus is on now.
Yeah, that's why I keep pushing Max to make sure, because he's been busy too, but to get up to camp where he's from and where I'm from, to actually get you up there to do snowmobiling, to get out on the boats, do the water skiing, do the wakeboarding, actually get out and experience nature and actually kind of have some fun in the snow and in the sun and in the season. That's why we still haven't came up there yet, just because we've been really busy over the last years. But we've been trying to plan this for how many years now? Just something to come up north. But I'm happy that's become a goal of yours, because I've seen you transform into, like, you're fit, you do more physically. Like, I've seen you become a lot more physically healthy over the last years.
Yeah.
So is that a external, your mom, your friends saying you would imagine you to be healthier? Or is that something you came across by yourself? You looked in the mirror and went, I feel I want to make that change. How did you make that decision?
So I just never gymmed throughout my childhood because I used to play sports as a kid, but not, I did swimming for like 2 years. I did soccer for 2 years. I did skating for a year. But then obviously in high school and in college, I really sort of stopped doing any sort of physical activity for the sake of like getting into U of T and chasing my sort of academic and financial dreams. So I put all of that on the back burner. I also felt at the time a sort of repulsion to the gym, because that was sort of what all of the kids my age were doing. And I was sort of like even rebelling against that for the sake of like, I'm going to just get rich instead. But then I'm like, a year ago, I figured that I would start hitting the gym, and I've been doing that for a year. I loved it.
Yeah, now you're looking stronger. I'm seeing some of your social media stuff, seeing you in person. You're looking stronger. That's good. So to go back a little bit, what inspired you to start, to just get rich instead, start building wealth at a young age? Was that your parents going, you need to save a certain amount of your money, or I want to have this by this age, or was it a grandpa, an uncle, a friend? Is there anything that actually inspired you to start building wealth?
Yeah. I've always been very ambitious since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And this is sort of where there's a bit of a backstory to this. So I struggled with a lot of mental health issues as a child, so particularly anxiety issues and OCD. And I believe a lot of that was, definitely part of it was genetic and biological, but a lot of it was circumstantial. So when I was in grade 7, up until that point, I was a kid raised in Canada, and sort of my my entire life and dreams and future was aligned with the continuation of kind of going to high school in Canada, going to college in Canada, and then doing something that I really want. And my parents decided to move me to Jordan, which would be a huge sort of regressor to my life.
Yeah.
And I was aware enough at the time to know that change would have sort of really taken away my entire future that I wanted, because it's a third world country, and sort of I was being ripped away from everything that my entire life revolved around and meant. And that caused me to sort of mentally collapse at the time. So I went through a really bad 3 years where I was, in and out of mental hospitals, and my world was collapsing around me. And during that time, I kind of vowed to myself that I wanted an exciting life. Like, I wanted something more from life, because I felt like I was sort of ripped away from a lot of like my important teenage years, or a lot of development years when all of my friends were going to college, and sort of those summers. And I felt a lot of resentment and anger. And that was when I decided that I want to do something special. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. But coming back from Jordan here, I realized that my life and we moved for a year, and then we came back. I recognized that my life had sort of been derailed, and that really sparked in me. And that was also the beginning of when I really started to sort of think for myself. I kind of went on survival mode.
Yeah.
Because as a child growing up, it's kind of easy to cruise if your life is relatively stable.
Yeah.
But once that gets shaken up as a child, you sort of kind of like snap out of it, and sort of really start to fend for yourself and think about yourself, and how to like build the kind of life you want against. It's sort of when you realize life, you kind of have to fight for your life in a way. Like life isn't particularly fair, and that if you want something, you have to really go out of your way to get it.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that about you. That's crazy. Thank you for sharing that story, and I really appreciate your honesty, because I feel like a lot of people put a stigma towards young millionaires, people that are younger and successful, that obviously their life is easy. They've never dealt with mental struggle. They've never dealt with this. They've never dealt with that. Like, look at how great their life is. Look, they're lucky. They grew from, they came from a family with money. They came from a family where it was given to them. That's a lot of people like just assume that. So I really appreciate that you brought up that you actually went through those struggles, and that's how you decided to become successful. It's not because oh, my dad was really rich. It's like, there's some Donald Trump quote or whatever. My dad lent me $1 million kind of thing. It wasn't like you just were kind of. It's not a family lineage of wealth, and that's my dad was rich, so I became rich. It was actually you went through the struggles and you decided, I want to become extraordinary. I don't necessarily know how yet, but I want to be something successful. So that leads me into my next question: is how does Maj define success? What is success to you? Is it numbers in a bank account? Is it how fast you can run a mile? Is it how much you could bench press? Is it the places you've been, the friends you have? What is a success for you now?
Man, I would have answered this question differently every 6-month phase you would have asked me. But
I think every time I've met you would have answered this question differently. Yeah. Like every time we hung out. Yeah.
For, the first 2 years of college and the time I was sort of building Altura, I would have defined success as experiencing as much as possible in life. And part of that, then sort of my logic would go down to a big part of that is financial success.
Okay.
And so, definitely my definition of success was rather material. I don't think at any time I would have said success was purely defined by money. I don't think I ever believed that. Okay. I think the world is way too complex to make such a narrow assumption or like a narrow connection. But I would have said that sort of a handful of material things, like success is sort of being financially well, and being able to explore and being free. But as I sort of got to meet a lot more people and travel and go throughout the world, I've come to the conclusion that there really is no definition to success. That the world is infinitely complex, that everyone sort of has their own meaning, their own value, their own story. Everyone starts at a different place in life. And given where people start in life, it's sort of like, for them, what success is very different. Like, for a lot of my family back home in Jordan, success for them is making it out of that country, coming to Canada. That is, the biggest success that they could come up with. It's even worth more to them than money. For a lot of people, success might be, raising that family, finding a loving husband, and taking care of children. So I don't think, but for myself individually, I really, one thing that I've always wanted and valued is experiencing life and growing as an ego, as an individual. And I believe that comes with experience, being open-minded. So it really is sort of just like growing your horizons, and it has nothing to do with money.
I really like that answer. The idea that success is different for each person. You recognize that.
Yeah.
So touching back on that has nothing to do with money. Then what does money mean to you? What is the value of $1 to you? Is it what you could buy with it, what you could do with it? What does money mean to you?
Money is a tool. Money is a framework, is a structure that we've created in a society to allow the free exchange of value, and that's really what it is. It's a tool. It's a form of leverage. It's a form of power. It's not good or bad. It can most certainly enhance the quality of life. It can most certainly provide you with experiences that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. Provide you even with health benefits, which is something that a lot of society doesn't want to admit. So I don't think that money is the end all be all. I don't think it's what makes you special or valuable in life. Yet I also don't reject or demonize, the stride to accumulate money, because I think at the end of the day, it's a tool.
Generally my viewpoint on money is it's always been a store of value or a key to access things, right? Like, if you want to go experience things, yes, you need to be outgoing. Yes, you need to have the physical ability to go do it. But then it's still, the plane ticket costs money, still to be able to get up and buy the shoes to go on that hike, to be able to still cost money. And yes, you can do it for cheap. Yes, you could backpack. Yes, you don't need a private jet to take you to a private yacht. You don't need that. A lot. But that idea of the money to actually get you there is it's a key to unlock doors, right?
100%.
So yeah, I think we actually now have a similar view on money, which is kind of fun to see. I like to hear that from you. So, were there any particular philosophies that guided you to this, your definition of success and where you are now? Was it your parents, or was there any specific quote, or was there anything that you went? Did you have a mentor? Did you have somebody that really guided you to who you are now?
I do. And I'm really into existentialism, basically like, and spirituality, like the highest level picture of existence. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos, read a lot of books on just like Eastern mysticism, just pure existentialism. And, once you kind of learn that stuff, it's really hard to see money as like the most important thing in life. But some of the truths that I've come to is like, in a very high level, grand scheme of things, life has no absolute meaning. And we're sort of all here we're sort of all here experiencing, I believe what's happening here is the universe is experiencing itself. So really all there is in reality is experience. That's all that's we're going through. And when you really break down reality and you sort of like remove all of the egoic bullshit, all of the dogma in your head, then you can really start to see money for what it is. So I would say I'm very spiritual, existentially.
Yeah. So when I said you had a mentor, somebody that you followed, was it a religious mentor, a spiritual mentor? Was it a physical man? Was it a physical woman?
He's a
Was it-
YouTuber.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm 21. New age mentors or YouTubers.
Okay. Cool.
His name is Leo Gora. So he's basically he runs a YouTube channel called actualize.org, where the purpose is to provide all the content you need to actualize yourself as a person. And he's very much into self-help, existentialism, but it's very different than what you see like in terms of modern self-help on the internet. So he's nothing like the Andrew Tates, the sort of red pill masculine self-help. He's much more like pure self-help, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing. So, have you met this guy? Do you hang out, or you just
No.
follow his page? You
I
actually
used to-
appreciate his work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that a lot of people feel. I'm really happy you brought that up. That you don't actually know him, especially with your resources and who you are.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people out there that are like, oh, I haven't met the mentor. Like, I need help. He doesn't know me. How am I going to ask this guy? Like, I don't know this person. I can't call them. Like, you don't need to actually have a physical connection with them. Like, you can, if you're a hockey player, you can be inspired by Wayne Gretzky or Connor McDavid and not know them.
100%.
Right? So it's nice that you actually brought up that you have mentors, you have people that you look up to.
Yeah.
But you don't call them every day. It's not like you see them. It's not like it's your dad. Like, I'm really happy you brought that up because nobody on this podcast or nobody's talked about that aspect of things, that you don't need to have a personal connection with somebody or an entity to actually be inspired or look up to them. Mm-hmm. So thank you for bringing that up. We're going to switch ideas and processes now. That you've briefly brought up some of the tumultuous history you've been through, but in specifically regards to business and your lifestyle, has there been any difficult challenges you've had to overcome? I know you've told me lots of them, Max has told me lots of them, but is there any you'd like to share that's something that was completely out of left field, something that was so difficult for you to work through, you didn't even know how you were going to, when the challenge arose, you didn't know how you were going to climb that mountain, how you were going to do that?
That's interesting. Yeah, one of them was after I left college, first year, at the beginning of second year, and I continued to focus on Altura, I really sort of, to a degree, isolated myself for a few months to kind of work on Altura. And that's part of being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It's quite lonely. And so I didn't really have much time for friends, for other people. And so I spent a lot of time inside just working on Altura all day. And the times that I wasn't working on Altura, I was smoking weed. So I was an introverted kind of pothead, software entrepreneur. And the problem with that is once I started to make money, and I had a lot of money, and I was sort of in that kind of phase of like isolated from the world, I came out not knowing who I was whatsoever. And I feel like a lot of what makes people know who they are is sort of their environments and the limitations that they have.
Yes.
So a college student defines themselves as a college student, and a worker for a company, a big part of how they operate throughout the life is because of their circumstances, their context, the people around them, their friends. But I found myself with, no college, I couldn't call myself a student, I couldn't call myself an employee. I didn't really have friends I was seeing at the time to sort of allow myself to figure out who I was. And I had a lot of resources, which meant that I had the freedom to be anywhere I wanted in the world
Yeah.
and kind of do anything. So I found myself with way too much freedom, yet no grounding or context, which overwhelmed me to death.
That's something I'm really happy you brought up too. The idea of a lack of structure
Yeah.
is difficult. Like the idea that you have to get up every day and go to class, you have to get up and go to work, that structure provides some sort of mental peace of mind.
And self-identity.
Yeah. And it actually allows you to kind of be who you are and you don't have to think as much. But if you have resources and availability and you have
No structure.
no structure,
Who are
it's,
you?
it's almost like an existential crisis.
Yeah.
So how did you fix that? Like that's a deep hole. That's a difficult thing to be in. How
Yeah.
did you come out of that? How did you climb out of that hole? Like how'd you overcome this challenge?
Yeah. At the same time, I was also grappling with nihilism. So the reason I bring that up is because a lot of what, a lot of drive for people is sort of making it is financial, is like some, and that like is sort of success to a degree. And that was what drove me, and sort of what I had spent a lot of my time thinking about and doing, was sort of my business, my financial situation, my life. And when I found myself with, excess capital, I was really starting to question the meaning of life. I was really sort of starting to become nihilistic. I became actually quite depressed, because it was sort of like I had experienced what it was like to have money, and clearly nothing significant or meaningful changed in my reality. And so I was really panicking. I was panicking a lot, and I was once again starting to grapple with a lot of the mental health issues I had growing up. So I found myself with my OCD was coming back. My OCD kind of comes in phases throughout my life. So I was finding my head stuck a lot. I was developing severe social anxiety. So it was multiple things kind of coinciding at the same time, which was like my nihilistic views from getting money. So like losing all purpose and meaning, really kind of going crazy as to trying to figure out what am I doing here? What's the purpose of all this? Along with having no structure, so I didn't know who I was. So I sort of just left with my thoughts, my nihilistic, depressive thoughts, for a while. What was the question? Because I was going somewhere.
How'd you come out of this hole?
Yeah, how did I come out of this hole? And I had such a severe sort of like I was in such a dead end that I sort of decided that I want to let everything go. That I sort of like wanted to not care about money anymore, that I wanted to not care. And I was in such dire need of some social connection, yet so much of my circumstance was actually holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that I thought I had money or I had money was holding me back. I thought I had to be certain places, and like some other places were not acceptable. But when I decided to let everything go, and I sort of humbled myself enough to admit that I actually don't know what I'm doing in a lot of ways, and humbled myself enough to just reconnect with some U of T friends and just go out, for walks with them, that I sort of really restart finding the meaning of life. And I sort of had to redevelop my worldview, and shed away the worldview that I was operating under since I started college and since I started Altura, which a lot of it was, kind of in that grind sort of worldview. And I sort of had an ego death of sorts, and I kind of decided that I wanted to just be like a hippie.
Yeah, I really like that you brought up the fact that once you've had money and you have the freedom and everything, it's not like, wow, my life got easy. Wow, everybody likes me now. I have a million friends. My life is great. I can sit back on my yacht and sip
That can
mimosas. And it's
happen.
like, but that wasn't who you are.
That's not who you are.
That's like just because you have money and just because you have freedom.
I
like,
thought that's who I was. I sort of, there was
Yeah,
a confusion in my head.
But it's I'm really happy that you brought up the fact that you had money and you have money and you were at all the stages where you're like, okay, I've achieved everything I thought I wanted to achieve financial success, and I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Right? There wasn't like a light bulb. I've made $17,648.12.
Yeah.
Now I can be happy. There wasn't that like
No.
tick box. And so you got to the thought where you would make a lot of money and you weren't happy. And to come out of that hole, you actually to go back to the, okay, I want to actually experience life a little more. As we start at the start of this podcast, I want to go and experience nature. I want to go on hikes. I want to go on walks.
Yeah.
I want to go have genuine friendships with people that care about who I am, who Maj is, who you are. And like, if you came up to me and you're like, dude, I sold my AirPods for a $5 or $10 profit, or, I did this, or I bought a watch and I sold it for like, I made $10. I'm like, I'd be just as happy for you as if you said, I made $35 million when I exited this opportunity. It's because it's what you care about. Mm-hmm. And something that I would care about as a genuine friend. And there's few people out there when you get to that financial success that you view aren't taking you a ride for your money. Do you know what I mean? Like when you had that financial success, it's almost like, okay, does everybody just want me to buy them dinners? Everybody just want to buy the flights? Do they want me to just pay for things?
Yeah.
Or are they just happy to spend time with me as me?
Exactly.
So I'm really happy you brought that up, that just because you have money doesn't mean you have more friends. Just because it doesn't make your life, it can open doors, it can give you experiences, but it doesn't just make your life easier.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's, I'm really happy how you explain how you got out of that hole is actually by going back to your roots a little bit.
Yeah, and
going
letting
back to your
go, like
friends.
even completely dismissing the fact that I have money entirely.
Yeah, it's nice because now you can pay for the flight to come back from where you were to here back to Toronto and back to be with friends, and you can still, afford to pay rent and sort of pay for groceries, but you don't, that's not the reason. You're not buying it for everybody. You're actually just with friends.
Exactly.
So that's really nice. So is there any significant lessons you've learned from your history that you feel now shape you as a human? Is there anything that happened, anything where you were, any real lesson that some life has taught you that now has shaped your personality in any regard?
I feel like throughout my life, I have continually been proven by life that life is not what it seems. It's more complicated in every sense. I think the biggest fuck up is assumptions. I would say keeping an open mind is an incredible value.
Is how it's spelled. Assumptions make an ass out of you and me. You know that one? Assumes make an ass out of you and me.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Have you, so we're going to try to slightly switch more back to the business side a little bit more. And from everything I know about Altura, I'd like to briefly talk about that company a little bit more and what you do there, because that is generally unconventional. And the idea that, you're starting this business in crypto, okay, great. And your coin, okay, great. But now you're doing NFTs, okay, sure, online NFTs. But then smart NFTs, that whole idea of a smart contract and building and growing is like, how did you come up with this unconventional idea? And how did you find a way to even idea to monetize it? Because this is when you guys were telling me this, I'm like, yeah, this is really cool, this is awesome. But now actually making it into the business today, like, how did you identify that opportunity? How did you come up with that thought process?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Altura is a Web3 gaming infrastructure company. So we provide tools and infrastructure to integrate Web3 and crypto technology into video games. So the idea is there's all sorts of gaming items in video games.
Yeah.
Games have been around for quite some time now, and it's one of the largest industries in the world. It's the biggest entertainment industry in the world. So
really, it's bigger than movies and TV
bigger than
and
movies
everything.
and music combined.
Wow. Okay. People always think movie stars are the big deal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bigger than
Gaming is
music.
All
Yeah. So it's bigger than movies and music. Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
People in these video games, all kinds of people value the assets and the resources that they get from the game. So in a shooter game, people might have custom skins for their weapon, custom swords. In a farm game, you might have special animals, special pets, special houses that you either earn in the game or actually spend real world resources to acquire.
Yeah.
And as more and more of our generation is spending more and more of their time in video games, it's becoming the case where the digital world is just as important as the physical world.
Okay.
We're spending, half our day in the digital world. We're spending a lot of our time and resources playing video games and actually earning things in video games, like spending a lot of our time. And so the idea is that those assets in the video game should and can have real world value just as much as like real world assets. And the reason is because other players usually want what you have. And because of that fact, there's an opportunity for some kind of free market there.
Okay.
And the way a lot of games are structured right now is these assets aren't tradable, they aren't sellable, they aren't purchasable. And if they are, it's usually, very narrow, linear through the game.
Yeah, it's the biggest game in the world right now is like Fortnite, isn't it?
Fortnite.
So if you buy a Fortnite skin and you pay your whatever your V-Bucks and you buy a skin, that's your skin. I can't give it to you, a skin. I can't sell it to you. I can't trade it. And if Fortnite goes, well, we're no longer offering this skin, they just take it away and you don't get that skin anymore, right?
Exactly. So Fortnite, you just buy an item, $30, it goes to Fortnite, you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
If you want to sell it later on, you can't.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the dilemma, the issue that Altura is trying to fix. And that's what crypto and NFT technology allows. So NFTs are a proof of ownership, digital proof of ownership. So the idea is you can make a weapon for a game, and you can make 10 of them, and you can prove cryptographically to the player base of the game that there's only 10 of this special diamond sword. And maybe a player can have a chance of winning it if they kill a monster. There's a 1% chance you get it, and that's that. Once all 10 swords are distributed, that's that. And you can see a world where other players would be willing to spend a lot of money for one of those diamond swords in the game. And so that's what NFTs allow. And Altura provides the tools for games to sort of build on that technology.
And a really cool thing that you guys have talked about too is like that diamond sword idea. Now, let's say he goes and kills 30,000 monsters and that diamond sword gets stronger.
Yeah.
It's a smart contract and that can actually level up the items too. Have you guys doing that as well still?
Correct. Yeah. So smart NFTs is the ability for these items to change, to iterate. So our infrastructure allows you to update the items seamlessly, transfer items seamlessly.
Because most people understand like an NFT is like, okay, I got a Bored Ape Yacht Club, I got a photo, and I can prove I own it. That photo isn't going to merge and evolve and grow, and you can't do anything. You own that digital photo.
Yes.
You guys actually do something where the NFT isn't necessarily a photo. It's literally a digital asset you can play with in the game. You can slash, you can hack with the sword, and you can level it up, and you can do all that. And so that's just such a beyond crazy opportunity and such a wild thing to like, okay, because just idea, the math and all the numbers and the coding behind the basic NFT is a lot. So how did you come up with, okay, we can do all of the coding to basically make a Fortnite skin transferable? Was that and most people think that was an insurmountable task. How did you come up with the idea and the team to be able to actually build that stuff? Was that, I know you're a very savvy and smart guy on the computer, was that you have like, okay, I'll just sit down and code everything, or did you hire people, or how did that work?
Yeah. So for the idea, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and Maxim, my college dorm room partner, we recognized that the crypto market was on the rise and the NFT market was on the rise, and we had both decided that there's an opportunity here for us to do something. So that was the sort of initial realization, is we recognized that there's something here. And then Maxim's like, okay, you know about Ethereum, you know about smart contracts, let's start thinking about an idea. And after like 3 or 4 days, we were on a call, and I came up with the idea of making it possible, providing APIs to integrate NFTs into video games. That idea came about because I played a lot of video games in high school. And sort of that was just the most intuitive thing I could recognize NFTs for. So I came up with the idea naturally, just on a call.
Okay.
And then I coded exclusively for the first like 3-4 months. So we had to create an MVP, a demo product, because we were launching and they wanted a demo product in a month, and that was like crazy for me. So I actually just locked myself in my parents' like basement and like coded for a month nonstop. Build like the first demo of Altura. And then later on I hired my first engineer, which was big.
So you've done so many crazy things and locked yourself in the basement, do the coding and doing this. How do you find you have a work-life balance? Do you ever have a work-life balance during that? Do you integrate work and life as the same? What does that statement mean to you, the idea of work, life, and making a balance there?
Yeah. This is something that I really struggled with, actually. So really, like, since grade 11, I became an absolute workaholic, and I found that a lot of my self-worth and self-value was tied to my work and my progress, and like my how efficient I was on the day-to-day. And so initially a lot of that was in terms of my school, my grades to get into U of T. I really wanted to get it into U of T because I wanted to escape the shitty city that I was in. And then in U of T, I was very obsessed with Altura, and I didn't really have much of a work-life balance. Like I was mostly working most of the time. And it was really until like second year that this strategy was starting to crumble. Because that's when I sort of had my identity issues and my anxiety issues. Yet so much of my like being, since I was so caught up with the grind set and working as hard as possible for the last 4 years, it was so hard to escape the guilt and like feeling that it's okay for me to like not be working. Like that was something that I had to accept, and that was actually really difficult. And like sometimes I would go out with my friends and I would actually just feel guilt, like real deep rooted guilt that I was not working. And so it sort of, that really only changed after I had that sort of deep nihilistic depression and I had that ego death, where I really had to, like, as a survival mechanism, drop that guilt and give myself the freedom to really breathe and go out and not feel like I need to be working all the time.
Yeah, so I guess how I understand it, how I'd summarize it is, as a work-life balance, you never really had one specific balance, but you look at it as how we started this, how you work less hours than you want to experience life. You look at it as a life aggregate, as a whole. Sometimes you just have to spend years, months, days just working. And then sometimes, once you've worked, you can actually take a little bit of a break and you can actually experience nature in life. So do you view it as for the balance, you look at it as a lifestyle as a whole. Like on my whole life, I have some sort of balance. Years where I'm happier and healthier and doing this, and years where I'm working harder. Is that how you view it? That's kind of how I understood it, at least.
For myself,
Yeah.
it really is like depends on the context of time, everything.
Yeah.
And like where I need to put more time and where I'm deficient in my life.
Yeah.
So right now it is a balance. Right now I'm doing pretty much split. Like I'm both working and giving a lot of time for myself and my friends and development. Whereas the last like 5 years, like 4 of it was work, and then I had like 6 months where I was like not working at all. That was sort of like a complete reaction to that.
Yeah.
It was a rebellion, and now I sort of found a balance of doing both. But I think in general, you should look at yourself, your life as a whole. You should look at where you are as a whole, where your career is as a whole, and there's no like right answer. So if you are at the time where it's very critical for you to make it in some way, then that might be the decision that you need to make, and you might need to make some sacrifices. So I do think that there is definitely room for sacrifices. I think that if you want to be extraordinary, there needs to be a certain part of your time where you have to sacrifice something. On the flip side of that, that's not to say where you can have a period of your life where you don't think about work and money at all, and you sort of like just dedicate that time of your life to your friends. So it really just depends.
So as our time comes to a close here, I like those points. But as our time comes to a close here, is there any one piece of advice? Is there a quote you live by? Is there anything that you would like to impart on some of our younger listeners and some of our listeners that are really trying to pay attention and make their way through some of these difficult avenues that you've been down? Is there any piece of advice you'd like to give them?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a quote that I heard, and it's really important. Make money, get bitches.
I like that. Okay. That's actually going to be, that is going to do really well. Awesome. Yeah. So thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for having me.
That was a fun one. That concludes the 6th awesome episode of the Young and Successful podcast. We hope you've had as much fun listening as we've had sharing these amazing insights, stories, and perspectives with you. Remember, making the first million is not just about the destination. It's about the journey, the lessons learned, the challenges conquered, and the laughter shared along the way. So don't forget to enjoy every single step of your success story. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, give us a virtual thumbs up, subscribe, leave a review, or do whatever you want to do to share us with your fellow dreamers and doers. And hey, if you've got a story to share, you want to be a guest, or a topic you really want us to dive into, slide on our DMs or send us an email. We would love to hear from you. Until next Friday, stay young, stay hungry, and keep chasing those millions with a smile on your face. And always remember, there's a million ways to make $1 million. This is Carl Grin, signing off.